We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all of our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. That's a quote from T.S. Eliot. It's on the back cover of the MyPilgrimage guidebook. It's kind of our motto. Hey, welcome to the MyPilgrimage podcast, episode 1. I'm David Taylor. I am one of the co-creators of the MyPilgrimage program, one of the co-authors of Feels Like Redemption, which is a book that came out a number of years ago. My brother Seth and I, we recorded that together. We wrote that together. That book led to a kind of a larger exploration of our lives as kind of spirit and body. We are recording at my house on the island of Maui. I live in the upcountry area of Maui on a farm up here, and we're recording our first episode outside. My son Andrew, we're in the quarantine, and my son Andrew's out there. He's doing the engineering and recording, so we're out on the front porch, and it's a nice spot to be. So what we're going to be doing on this podcast is we're going to be exploring the whole series. We're going to go back to the beginning. It's been out for a number of years, but now we're going to kind of restart the whole thing. We're going to go back from the beginning. We're going to go through the videos. You're going to hear goats in the background. You're going to hear chickens. You're going to hear birds. Don't worry about it. Those are our goat friends. We have a nice big goat pen right next door. Anyway, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going back to episode 1, and we're going to go through each video. And then what we're going to do is do a discussion about it. Later on, Seth and I are going to Zoom, and we're going to get into a discussion about kind of what episode 1 was, how we started this, where it kind of came from. We're going to go back through the whole story. And through the course of this, each episode for a while, the first episodes are going to be going through the videos that we have. We have the MyPilgrimage original series that we shot up in the high desert in Arizona a number of years ago with a bunch of guys that were going through the materials. They were going through the Feels Like Redemption book, and they were working through the MyPilgrimage guidebook. Both of these are available on Amazon.com still. We've actually set a better price for this one, so this is gold. If you guys are interested in kind of tearing your soul open and finding what's inside, get the MyPilgrimage guidebook. Okay, so let's get started. We're gonna go through episode 1. We're gonna play it, and what you got here is this first episode is called "What Are We Medicating?" And I'm gonna tell my story in this video. We're at a fireside chat up in the Arizona desert. And we took a bunch of guys backpacking back there, and I'm pretty disheveled looking. I think I have a beard. But I just kind of go back to the beginning, and I really talk about what this means, what an expanded consciousness means, what it means to kind of work through your belief systems, especially regarding the creator of the universe, and how does he feel about us, how does he feel about our sexuality. We talk about pornography and pornography addiction, which was the original impetus for beginning this, but it's expanded into something much, much more. And so enjoy the video, and then come back, and Seth and I will do a little zooming, okay? All right. Chapter 1 was really big for me because being able to kind of reflect back on that whole journey was really important. And you don't really get a chance often when you're so busy in your daily life to really sit with it and think about where you've been. Too often, and especially in my story, I was told by group leaders and by books that I read, and pretty much kind of all society, that the disease was my addiction. That was the thing we had to cure, was you had this disease and that's it. And if you can kick that, then you will have freedom. I even actually had that for a little while. I had a 6-month stint at one point during the course of when I was really dealing with addiction, where I didn't masturbate and there was no porn, and the odd thing was is New Year's Eve, and I'm actually on the back of a boat in Hawaii. It's been 6 months, and I'm sitting there looking up at the stars, and I didn't feel free. I just looked up at the stars. I'm like, I do not feel free. This is not. If this is what it is, then something's not right. when I first started going to therapy and started doing this type of work and learning about it, I had someone, as soon as I said, I have a porn addiction, the therapist said, it's no big deal. And I was like, what? It's no big deal? I was like, I've been fighting this for 10 years. It's destroying my marriage. It's destroying my life. It's a big deal. And he goes, no. He goes, that's just a symptom. He says, we're going to cure the actual disease, and then you won't need the medication anymore. And I was like, what? And he goes, yeah, you're just using that as medication. And then he started teaching me kind of what that's about, and as I've kind of journeyed through this, I start to see that, wow, it's not just porn, we medicate with a lot of different things, and it's not just, we see there are more acceptable forms, I think, of medication, in our society, and especially in the church and in our Christian kind of world, and porn is definitely not one of those. So I started to learn that, and it's been a fascinating kind of thing to kind of sit back and be able to go, oh, there's this thing underneath, because when I really started striking into that, is finding that I didn't need it all of a sudden because there was healing that was happening. That kind of blew me away.
So Dave, what were you medicating?
What I know now is and what I've learned is that I was medicating all kinds of intense pain. For me, I guess when I'd say I was jonesing the addiction, or when I really had to go to porn and I had to look at it and I had to masturbate, I had to go through that and numb myself with that. Stress was a major thing, but I found knots, I found pain. I wasn't really conscious of it because all I could think was I don't want to feel right now, kind of thing. And for the longest time, it was a focus on the evil of this thing and the shame and the guilt that I had in dealing with it, but I had to do it. And I just wasn't aware. I wasn't even aware that you could become aware of something underneath, If we have this, when there's this huge monumental thing called pornography in this industry that's totally focused on satiating these cravings, it's pretty easy to vilify it and go, that's the enemy, and I have to overcome that. And so we build whole structures and entire industries around dealing with that. And my whole thing was, and to be honest with you, those are fine, and there were a lot of those that along the way that helped me kind of start giving me steps along the way to figure out what was wrong, But when I finally kind of moved it aside into this different category and saying, that's all the medication. I don't want to take meds anymore. I want to actually heal. When that happened, there was a real shift in the way that I approached everything. I was able to kind of pull back and see it and analyze it for what it was and start saying, oh, there's something underneath, so I'm going to go after that. And it was quite a journey. Whenever I would go to porn, it was because there was this knot that would really tighten up big time in my chest. It was painful. I always found it interesting because I started thinking about stuff like, well, what is it? Like is there a muscle set in there that's kind of cramping? Because when you feel a cramp, you can feel it and going, but we feel knots, we feel them in our throat and our chest and everything. And I'm going, what's going on? How am I actually feeling that? What's happening? Became very curious about that. And then I started saying, I don't want that, I don't want it. I don't think it should be there. That's when that was a major breakthrough. I was going, I don't want this. I think that God doesn't want me to have this. That's actually not a normal thing for human beings to carry around, and we don't need that. I found little things here in my throat, little pains in here, and I started going, I don't want to, and when I would medicate with porn, it would numb it to the point where I could function, I could get around, I could, do my work or whatever. Be a parent, somewhat make breakfast for the kids, But I started to think that I didn't want to have that anymore at all because there was no peace. You couldn't really be at peace. And that's what I really craved, because I wanted that whole peace that passes all understanding thing that the Bible talks about.
What's one of the things that you discovered you were medicating?
Well, the big one was, my father was killed when I was young. had a major trauma event in that. That pain. I mean, we all know about repressed pain, right? That's pretty popular and out there in the world. We've talked about, oh yeah, men shove it down. Don't shove it down. But what we're actually shoving down, what do we actually, when they say that, it's kind of a catchphrase, but when we actually pushing it down, where is it going? What are you doing with it? And then does it stay? And one of those things was I had a lot of grief, and a lot of anger, which was in here because my father died in a way that we kind of made him into somewhat of a hero. But really, as a kid, I was angry that my dad had left and abandoned us, even though that's not what he meant to do. So I was dealing with that. I was also just dealing with the everyday stress of trying to be a father and a husband and raising a family and that kind of thing. And yeah, it was. And I think along my journey, I've discovered more and more little things here and there. But it's actually got to the point where it was like, oh, everyday stress. There's pretty easy things to do. You don't have to medicate it. You can just kind of give. I learned to surrender.
So Dave, how do we stay really objective with ourselves and know what's really going on versus just what we're feeling?
There's a concept of going into yourself and being able to actually talk about what's inside you. It's funny. I was talking to a friend the other day, and he said, I'm angry. And I kind of reversed it on him. And I said, here, just try to say this. I say, I have anger in me. And he said, yeah. I said, okay. And he says, I have anger in me. I go, do you want anger in you? And he said, no. I said, okay. Let's not have it in us then. That's the thing that if we say I'm angry, and then we go distract ourselves with work, we distract ourselves with things, and we just kind of shove it down. Sometimes we need someone to just say, hey, no, that's in you. Pay attention to it, and let's get it out of you, so you don't have to deal with it anymore, because it'll come back later. It just comes back in other forms, and you see dads, and you see friends, and people with tempers, and you see people with stuff, and well, we all have friends who blow their tops, and I'm one of those. I'm one of those guys, and blow their tops over nothing. We just set it off, and it's just like and my wife's like, why are you so angry? And I'm like, that kid did that to me, or you said this to me. And it doesn't seem rational when you're seeing it from the outside. Sometimes you need people to go, hey, no, that's actually in you, and later on that's going to manifest into something that it's going to slowly kind of, I say, build a crust over it, so you can't sense it. It only pops up in that way, and you're not attached to it. So you need to, I got to go medicate, I got to go work out, I got to go drink, I got to, whatever it is that I got to do to not feel that. But there's we don't actually have to carry it with us, So that was the thing, is that sometimes you need someone to be able to point it out and say, hey, it's in you, and you don't have to have that. There's a wise saying that says, the enlightened man you cannot offend the enlightened man, because he's always able to kind of understand what is what. If someone's angry at him, he can see anger in them, and then he can objectively kind of talk about it, because if someone like lashes out at him, there's nothing to reflect back at him, So I learned that when I got angry, I could just go process that out, not have to medicate it, because you could just get rid of it. That's how it happened, I think the key is that understanding that our addiction is pointing to a deeper wound that's underneath. We need to be able to take that addiction, set it aside for once, and figure out what we're medicating. What is the thing underneath that we want to heal from? Because if we find that, and we work on that, then medication is not going to be necessary anymore.
Hey, Seth, how's it going?
Hey, I know that you're kind of new to the podcast gig. You haven't.
Yeah, I'm new, but no, I mean it's fun. I'm gonna get used to it. I'm gonna, we recorded the stuff outside. We set up the microphone out here on the porch, and there's a little wind. There were some goats in the background.
Dude, that's perfect.
It's funny because when we first started doing it this morning, we set up to do it, and literally, I hit record. I'm like, okay, we're all set up, and I start recording. And immediately my neighbor starts up a chainsaw. Just goes, but no, it worked out. And what we did was basically, we were introducing the book and introducing everybody, introducing the podcast, and then just talking about, and then we have episode 1. So we just watched episode 1. We just listened and that was the one in My Pilgrimage. We should preface this with that this was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Up in Arizona. And so just so that everybody's kind of aware of it, that maybe it's their first time seeing the video. We had a group of guys that had gone through the books and were going actively through the books, and we backpacked way up into the mountains in the Superstition Wilderness in Arizona. We were way up there, and it was February, which is winter, and
most of us were not equipped for that experience.
And Ryan,
we're like, it's Arizona, right? I mean, you just need some sandals and a jacket.
No, our friend Ryan was on the trip. Ryan and I had done some hiking in Alaska together, and he was a little more equipped, and I was very well equipped because I lived in Alaska at the time.
And it was some rugged country too. It wasn't a joke.
Man. Oh, it's no joke at all. In fact, that country that we went, well, I think we went like 4.5 miles or something. No, it was like 7 miles.
7 miles into the Superstition.
But it was 4.5 miles up, and then into the back kind of valley, and then down into that valley, and then there was this crazy, like, weird abandoned old farm back there, and we slept back there by that creek. Everybody was pretty wiped out and exhausted and stuff. So it was, but finally the sun did come out, and everybody kind of was able to start having conversations and talking about and working through things. So episode 1 was all about what am I medicating? There was this introduction to this idea that pornography it wasn't the enemy. It always was for me. It's funny because it's been so long now. I look in terms of the experience of being addicted to porn and having this, and for me also alcohol was a big thing. Having those issues.
He says while he sips fine wine.
Oh, well, it's funny. I am having a glass of Pinot Grigio while I'm talking. It's afternoon here in Hawaii in the upcountry in quarantine, and Maria and I have gotten to the point, and my son, my 21-year-old is in my office, is now in his bedroom. So
nice.
We're the rules have been rewritten just a little bit.
Right. It's fine. It's 5 o'clock somewhere there.
Well, I mean, it's important because one of the things is, like, I have a lot of friends that are in recovery movement, and some people that are probably listening to this are coming from the recovery movement.
A lot of guys are now. We're getting a lot of guys are coming into the Facebook group now, and they're all coming seeing us through Triple X Church, and they're coming through the recovery, way of being.
Well, then let's frame it that way, as kind of a way to understand what we mean by medication, and why I can, as a former alcoholic, I can sit and have a glass of wine, and I don't get drunk, and it doesn't do a thing, and it's not a thing for me at all.
Right. Well, and I want to say real quick, because if there was any words that ignited my process towards freedom, it was when you were telling me about this experience you were having of freedom, and I'm listening with everything I got about everything you're going through, and I'm going, holy crap, my heart's opening, because there might be hope here. And then you said, it's really simple, man. You said, and I remember this is literally was a formative moment for me. You said, porn's not the problem. It's the medication for the problem. And I was like, okay. And you go, so what are you medicating? And I went, I don't know. And you went, that's what you have to find out. Right. And literally, and if there's anything that gets referenced from Feels Like Redemption, when we see people talk, when guys are coming and giving, kind of testimony about what they're experiencing, it's that they're always like, and now of course we'll watch some people take it right into some behavioral space where it's all of a sudden like, now we have to, confess to each other every time we medicate. You know what I mean? Like, no, that's not what we meant.
Right. And it's an understandable kind of juxtaposition. People go there because that's still the recovery mindset. This is a behavioral kind of thing. Because as I did, and as you did, when we came to our first realization, I want to stop this behavior, it was all about behavior. And the church was telling us that this is a behavior thing. It's sinful and it's lustful, and this is the thing. And it was all about behavioral control. Yeah. And Floyd, telling me, hey, it's, as we talked about in the video, Floyd saying, no. And he brushed it off almost too easy.
Like it was nothing.
Right. It wasn't, and it literally wasn't a thing. And he was a raging alcoholic, and he was a Vietnam vet, all kinds of pain and stuff like that. But when he had gone through his healing experience, it's the same kind of thing. And for me, that was the shift that really, it was massive for me too. I mean, it was just such a simple thing at the time.
Yeah. And it's massive for most people. We see a lot of guys get freedom really quick. They get freedom because they don't, but they still might use porn.
Right.
And they're like, yeah, no, I don't feel bad about it. I don't feel guilt. I don't feel shame. I don't feel separated from God anymore. And I go, okay, so what's the next step? Well, now we got to go deeper. You actually want to get to the point where you're not using it anymore? Yeah.
Right.
All right, let's just go deeper.
Right.
But it turns out the first step, and of course, I don't know how we missed it reading the Bible, right? Grace is the first step, where you come to, and grace isn't like, oh, thank God, Jesus died, and therefore we're not going to go to hell for this, but we still feel guilty all the time. Grace is when all that guilt and all that shame and all that just goes. It's gone.
Fun. Yeah.
And then now we can just be, and use some porn. Yeah, big deal. And
Yeah.
I get that way with guys right away. They're like, hey, it's not a big deal. I go, what do you want? But I always keep going, but what do you want? Right. Do you want to continue to look at porn? They're like, well, I don't really feel bad about it anymore. I'm like, okay, but do you see the role it's playing in your life? Right. Do you see how it's inhibiting a movement towards a deeper understanding of love, intimacy, sex, creativity, how it's inhibiting everything about your movement in your life? Or like, it's not porn that's doing it. It's the thing that's still there's still something, whether it's a program that your ego is running or some sort of, there's still a medicinal quality to it. Let's go get it,
Yeah. For me, it was pretty simple. I was married. I had 3 kids, right? And I said, for me, that shift took place pretty fast because I could see how like pornography was not compatible with being a good husband or a good father. It just didn't work. Sure. Right. You know what I mean? And so for me, it was a very quick step as in like, cause honestly, and part of my story is I've been a dad almost about as long as I've been a human, like in terms of, I have a 21-year-old. I became a dad at 23. You know what I mean? I've been married for 23 years and I got married at 21. You know what I mean? So my whole goals have always been centered around my family, sure. And I look at it now and I go, yeah, I guess that's part of my soul mission or whatever on this planet, on this what I'm doing here. Part of my thing is to have this family and life experience and full of joy and healing and stuff. And so it was a quick step for me to go, yeah, I know I'd like to get rid of it completely. But definitely true. The first thing was that whole like, wait a second, I don't have to feel bad about any of this. And now you can start to see some of the more mystic things that Jesus was talking about and going, oh, that sounds completely different in my years I used to, like, it's funny, Jesus's words became very present for me at that time. All of a sudden, it was like he was talking to me about me here and now. He wasn't talking about the afterlife, and he was talking about my life as it was. And all his teachings became very real, especially centered around the idea of the Holy Spirit. And we're going to talk a lot about spirit and about the Holy Spirit and about those terms as we found in this podcast.
Yeah, when we get into the one of the videos is about language.
Right.
It'll be really fun to get into that because that was the thing. Even when I wrote Feels Like Redemption, and it went to the editors, and I remember when one of the big comments I got when I got back the first draft edit, it said, when you just say the word spirit, are you referring to the Holy Spirit?
The Holy Spirit.
And I was like, right. I remember my response was, is there another kind?
Yeah. Well, that was what Floyd was saying, when I was coming back to him with all these questions about what I was experiencing, and I'm saying, and he's like, well, and I was talking about spirit, and I'm like, did you talk about spirit? He's like, wait, you're a Christian, right? And yeah, you guys talk about Holy Spirit all the time. What are you?
What's wrong with you?
Yeah, what's wrong with you? And
I was like, you are Christians by your powerlessness.
Right. And that's what I said to him. I go, oh, come on, man. I said, we don't talk about it as if you can do something with it.
Yeah, it's not a thing.
You know what I mean? Like it's a thing.
You don't mention that part.
We don't mention that part. I said, we talk about it when it comes to worship service, especially the good, like the Chris Tomlin songs. Right. And if you're a Pentecostal,
the minor chord hits.
Yes, minor comes up into the major chord. And then we talk about it when it comes to, if you're a Pentecostal, and the speaking in tongues and all that stuff like that. But in terms of real power, in terms of the power to heal, to heal addiction, to heal anything, to actually change someone's life, it seems like if you look across the church landscape, it's just gone. Right. And of course, that's our experience. I mean, you can tell. I'm sure that a lot of people go, "Hey, I've seen something happen in my church," and I go, "That's fantastic and that's great." I said, but the real power that I've seen has been outside.
I've never met anyone who can tell me one single story about an actual manifestation, a true manifestation of healing by the Holy Spirit. Not one.
Wow.
And I've seen demons cast out in churches, and I've seen some of that stuff in Africa, and I've seen people, with kind of the classical Pentecostal manifestations, slain in the spirit, ideas. But as far as actual, I know, we got to.
Yeah,
but as far as actual healing, actual healing goes, and that's really probably the thing that led to the creation of MyPilgrimage, is that we were asking this question after these experiences where all of a sudden power, and we were raised on the Bible stories, right?
Yeah.
We got these huge Bible stories, and like there has to be, like, there's so much power presented in the scriptures that we were like, well, this has got to be, there has to be something real. Like there has to be an actual power out there. And when we started going that paradigm flip, okay, the problem is it's in you and you got to get it out of you. You're medicating something within you. All of a sudden they started locating it in this kind of energetic arena. All of a sudden it's in me. And I still remember that when I asked you, when you said that thing about, it's in you, it's you're medicating something. And I started going, okay, well, how do you get to it? You're like, well, it turns out you got to feel.
Right.
And you were learning how to feel at White Raven Center, and you just started teaching me how to feel. So I started just for 10 minutes a day, just trying to just feel my body, just be aware that there's something below my neck.
Yeah.
And within just a few days, I started having experience of, like, at times it'd be like what I can only describe as the presence of God. I would feel this, like, I was in a big closet, and I was in this walk-in closet, and I would feel like, I don't think I want to come out of the closet. Like, it's just so good in here.
I'm good.
And then, and luckily you were there to kind of help teach me, because in my old paradigm, I would have been like, somehow I found a way to get God to come down here.
Right.
I didn't even play a Chris Tomlin song, and God still came,
Yeah.
And the new paradigm was like, oh, it was always here.
Yeah.
It's already here. I just became aware of it. Very, very Old Testament, that idea, surely God is in this place and we were not aware.
Right.
So I became aware, and I'm going, and I started going, oh, and you know what's funny? I don't even think I wrote this anywhere in the book, but there was a quote I had heard, and I don't know if you gave me this quote or what, by this old 13th century, 14th century, somebody like that, Christian mystic named Meister Eckhart, where he had said, the kingdom of God is not found within the human soul by a process of addition, but by subtraction. And somehow that took root in me, and I was going, oh, so it's already in there. And, in First John I was saying, kind of illuminated some of the scriptures with John, saying, it's the Spirit is in you, and it will lead you into all truth, and you don't need anyone to teach you. It's already there. I started going, okay. So I started going, so it's all in me, the good and the bad. Paul's saying, it's not me who sins, but sin that dwells in me. And I'm going, okay, so this is in there. I got to learn how to feel that. And I still remember, man, before I had my experience, I'd spent a couple weeks just practicing feeling, and I'm on this road trip to Spokane doing a big long sales trip. And I don't know, I told you this, when I would fall asleep on my road trips at the wheel all the time, I'd be like 7-hour trips. And so the way I'd stay awake was looking at porn. So I'd be out in the middle of the desert driving on a road somewhere, and I'd just pull up if I just took a glance at a naked body or something like that on my phone once in a while, my adrenaline would pump.
Oh, wow.
I would literally pull up a photo, just put it down here, and every once in a while when I start to get a little drowsy, I just look at it and go, oh, back up, and I keep going.
Well, I guess.
But the inevitable conclusion, of course, was that at some point, like, the heart's pumping, and eventually I'd find a rest stop, or I'd pull off a dirt road somewhere, and I'd find a place to masturbate. And I still remember this one because I pulled over to this rest stop, and there's nobody there. It's way out in the desert. And I pull way over into this kind of, nook and cranny over here, and I masturbate. But I felt a presence inside me, like it was like it was enjoying watching.
Right.
I remember being creeped. I was quote unquote creeped out by it. I was just like, hell is that? Right. And that's when I called you. I'm like, hey, I got to tell you about this experience. And you were like, you were like, well, maybe I was driving. As the next day I'm driving home from Spokane, and you were like, well, maybe it was like what I dealt with, like it was like a demon or something like that. And I'm like, okay, what do I do? He's like, well, you do like I did, you like process it, get it out of your body. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. And you're like, well, just give it a shot. And so I get home and I tell my wife about it, and she's like, what are you gonna do? I'm like, well, I was, thinking you could pray for me. And, I should pass the buck, because I was scared shitless. So, you pray for me, and we can get it out. And she's like, I don't know how to do that. I was like, well, you got nothing to lose, right? She goes, Yeah, I guess. Yeah, good point. So I lay down on the bed. She put her hand on me, and she's like, "Oh God, we just think there's something in Seth, and we're not sure." And then boom, thing just manifested. It was like a movie.
So in this mindset, that's the thing you were medicating.
Yeah,
Right.
big time. But what's interesting is, of course, is that was just the beginning of the complex layers of what makes us human. The problem, of course, is if you have a paradigm that this is an evil thing and I've got to stop doing it by any means, well then, I hit that spot, but I wouldn't be able to go any further, because if I continue to explore the depths of me and my struggles, then I'm going to get into more stuff. And it turns out as things emerge inside of us, they will ask for medication, and your ego will take you straight into that program.
Right.
So, people lots of times like, okay, great, you're not a porn addict anymore, but you're still an alcoholic, or you're a workaholic, or you've got a more acceptable addiction, but the idea is to come to the point where like similar, how Jesus was teaching about this kind of non-attachment, where you're completely free of all those things.
Sure. It reminds me of a guy I met. You know what? We should probably. You know what? We're going to try wrapping this up pretty quick.
How long are we going to try to make these things, by the way?
Oh, it's going to be these conversations probably 30 to 40 minutes.
Okay.
If we can do them in that way, because the videos are 10 to 15 minutes, and I do a little 3-minute intro.
You can always fix it in post.
Yeah. I'm not going to even edit this out, man. I'm going to be like, we're going to have a little chatter here.
Yeah. If it's good sound quality, people will listen, even if it's not edited.
Right.
If it is. I just think the people, like, when it's crappy sound quality, then you got.
So anybody who's listening, if you have comments on our sound quality, keep it to yourself for just a little bit, because we got what we have is we're going to have a Patreon at mypilgrimage.com. Up on the right hand side, there's going to be a link to a Patreon account, and you guys can go on to Patreon and you can support. Just throw in $5 a month, and then we're going to use all of that for upgrading sound and tech quality. So we're going to put
and the Pinot Grigio.
And no, this is Kirkland's signature Pinot Grigio. We don't need to upgrade.
We don't need to.
What we need is air conditioning in the house.
Didn't you get that sound kit though?
Oh, I did. Yeah. We get the microphones. We get the whole thing. It's been great.
Okay.
Yeah, and so no, but if click on the thing, $5 a month. If you find this stuff helpful, or if you found My Pilgrimage helpful in the past, and you're a listener who is like wants to contribute or whatever, that's up to you guys. Yeah. We're giving away the videos. We're giving away PDFs. We're going to give away this podcast. We're kind of taking a hands-off approach, and as they say, we're going to let the Holy Spirit do it.
Yeah,
we're going to talk about this. We're going to do these once a week. We're going to be putting this podcast out. Right now, it's going to be on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts, and then as we get a little bit of a following, we'll be able to get it up on Spotify as well. And this is going to be on YouTube too. So we're going to have the My Pilgrimage YouTube channel. So all this video recording that we're doing here, it's going to be up there. You'll get to see our lovely office / bedroom of a 21-year-old. And and Andrew Taylor, my son, he's our producer engineer. So he's helping
producer engineer.
Yeah, he'll let me use his gaming headset for this one. So
yeah, I saw that, man. That's sweet, dude.
So just wrapping this up.
Okay, so wrapping this up.
Yeah, wrapping this conversation up, because we're going to get into the next video for next week. There's going to be a lot of questions. The email address right now is mypilgrimage3@gmail.com. People can email us questions, but the best way to get questions is go to the Facebook page, ask to enter the group. It's My Pilgrimage on Facebook, and we'll let you in. Come on in and engage. Just one thing on that Facebook group: it is a no judgment zone. Don't come in there if you're going to try and convince people of anything, or if you're going to kind of say, hey, this is the only way to think about these things, because we have people from every walk of life, and including other religions, and people that are working through,
and women
too, people that are really talking about it. It is a no judgment zone. It is a place to share your story and to listen and to learn and be respectful. We have zero tolerance for disrespect in that thing. So
and it's not, we're okay with disagreement. We're just not
disagreement is great.
It's not okay with people blasting away at each other. We get people coming in going, sin and damnation, you're going to hell kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That will not.
It's just not helpful.
Nope.
It hasn't been. It hasn't been.
And we should treat it like a pilgrimage. Like if you're walking on the pilgrimage road, you don't run out and smack somebody in the back of the head. you just walk.
I know. Can you imagine that the pilgrim is walking alongside the road and goes, like, just start passing. There's a farmer. That is not how you take care of those sheep, and then walk out. That is not how you make mozzarella. Just keep walking about. Tell everybody what to do. It's fantastic.
We're gonna have to eventually lead people on pilgrimages, right?
We'll do it.
Iona, Scotland.
Iona, Scotland.
Let's call it
Okay,
right
and
now.
and for the viewers, if you have an idea, if you have a pilgrimage, a real one, physical one, or share and tell us what you're doing. If we're doing the internal experience, that's the one we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
When we talk about my pilgrimage, we're actually referring to that turning outward, going inward. Starts with that question: what am I medicating? Instead of understanding these addiction things and all this other stuff as the medicine we use for the internal experience. When it shifts, and it shifts permanently, then the internal experience begins to create the external experience. And we're going to talk about that later on. We're going to talk about how, and Seth used the word manifestation a few times. We're going to talk about kind of how the spirit works. We're going to talk about that a lot in this class. So, not this class, this podcast.
Right on.
Okay,
Yeah.
so hey, bro, thanks, man. That was good. Good to see you too.
Yeah, you too.
Yeah.
It'll be fun to have these conversations, and share the journey since, because we've continued walking into the unknown internally and externally.
Absolutely.
There are many stories to tell. So.
Yeah, holy cow. So now I was telling people in the intro, I was telling them, hey, we're going to, after we kind of work through the video series, we're going to do this, we're going to do the second series as well. And after we do those, we're going to just keep going. We're going to take it way beyond this. And it's going to go beyond addiction ideas and beyond all this stuff. We're going to get into the biggest scope and the dream big, and we're going to have all kinds of people on this podcast.
Yeah.
So
We'll have episodes. We'll have episodes about theology. We'll have episodes about money. We'll have episodes about sex. We'll have episodes about,
marriage,
politics, marriage, like
politics. Yeah, we'll get into all of it.
Exploring, but it's all going to be from the standpoint of what does it look like to step into the unknown inside of ourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
So the whole goal is that we can hold our entire lives with a type of grace that allows for an open-ended way of living. Like we can just continue. So,
yeah.
Great.
Okay. Well, cool. Thanks for taking the time, man. Give Amy and the kids hugs for me. Okay.
Yeah. They're up in the islands right now, man. They're on they had to go, and I got a bunch of work to do, so I'm chilling here.
And what are you working on? Just quick little 30-second blip.
I am currently working on editing I'm creating a guidebook in collaboration with a company in New York, working on helping young female soccer players deal with anxiety.
Wow.
Yeah, it's called it's Soccer Girl Probs is the name of the company, and it's a soccer girl's guide to conquering anxiety.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Okay, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, man.
Okay. Get to there.
So that was the discussion. That was Seth Taylor, my twin brother, and I hope you enjoyed it. We're going to be doing a lot of that over the next couple weeks. We're going to be doing an episode a week. So come back every week, and there'll be new episodes. Hit the subscribe button. Really want you to share, but if you go to MyPilgrimage.com right now, you'll see links to the books. You'll see a link to the Facebook group, which you can join. You'll see a bunch of content, including all of the videos that we're going to be releasing. There's no discussions. Those discussions will come out with the podcast, but all of the videos right now are available for free right now from the entire series and all along. And if you just want to sprint on those, go ahead, do it. Please send us comments. Put your comments on the Facebook page, or you can email us, mypilgrimage3@gmail.com. That's mypilgrimage3, all lowercase and the number 3.com. You can email comments, and you can let us know what your thoughts are. Also, just tell us your story. That's the Facebook page is a really good place to do that. If you go to the My Pilgrimage group, and just talk about kind of where you're coming from. So, really encourage you to grab the books and just engage with this group, because it is kind of a judgment-free zone. Everybody has such a unique story to tell in this world when we're dealing with addiction, we're dealing with the struggles that we have, and we're dealing with the religious beliefs that we wrap around a lot of that stuff, and as we work through it. So anyway, it was great seeing you guys. We're really excited. We're going to get better at this. We're going to build my son and I are kind of working on a studio setting right now so that we can get this thing really, really going. But for now, we'll just be doing it out here on the porch. So anyway, aloha, friends, and we'll see you next week.